The morning sky over New London was pale and calm. The airport was busy with travelers moving in every direction. People dragged bags, held coffee cups, and spoke quickly into phones. Among the noise and rush, one passenger moved quietly through the crowd. Her name was Mira. She was dressed in a plain gray jacket and dark trousers. Her hair was tied neatly, and she carried only one small bag. There was nothing special about her at first glance. She looked like any other traveler, yet there was something unusual in her eyes. They were calm and focused, as if she was listening to something far away. Mira had arrived early and sat near the large window of the waiting lounge. Outside, aircraft moved across the runway, their engines humming. She watched them without much expression. Other passengers chatted around her about vacations, business trips, and family visits. She remained silent. When the announcement came for boarding Flight 417 to Titan City, she stood and joined the line. The staff greeted her kindly, and she gave a polite nod in return. She never said a word. Her voice remained unheard. Inside the plane, she found her seat near the middle row. The cabin smelled of fresh air and coffee. People placed their bags in overhead bins, some laughing, others nervous. Mira sat down quietly, fastening her belt. She looked out the window again as the sunlight touched the wing. The captain's voice came over the speaker, calm and confident. "Good morning, passengers. This is Captain Drew, and with me is my co-pilot Simon. We are flying at an altitude of 30,000 feet to Titan City. The weather is clear and the flight will be smooth." Passengers clapped lightly, as many do when hearing a friendly pilot. Mira closed her eyes and leaned back. She was not afraid of flying. She had been in the air far more times than anyone on this plane could imagine, but no one knew that. Not yet. As the aircraft taxied onto the runway, the engines grew louder. The force pushed everyone gently back into their seats as the plane lifted from the ground. The city below grew smaller until it was only lines and shapes. The sky opened wide and blue above them. A man sitting next to Mira tried to start a conversation. He was cheerful, wearing a business jacket and a wide smile. "First time flying?" he asked. Mira turned to him and gave a small smile, then shook her head. He continued talking, trying to make her comfortable. "Don't worry. This airline is one of the best. My name is Dan." She nodded politely but said nothing. After a few minutes, Dan gave up, sensing she preferred quiet. He pulled out his tablet to watch a movie, leaving her alone again. The flight attendants began moving through the aisle with drinks and snacks. Mira declined politely. She simply rested her hands on her lap, eyes open, watching the clouds. Every now and then, she looked at the reflection on the window instead of the sky itself. It showed her face calm but alert. From time to time, her attention went to the cockpit door. She listened to the rhythm of the engines, to the soft beeps from the control panels ahead. To most passengers, it was just background noise. To her, it was like music. She could tell from sound alone when the autopilot adjusted the altitude or when the wind shifted. She had trained her ears long ago to notice such things. The habit never left her. At one point, the flight attendant came again and offered water. Mira accepted this time, whispering a quiet "thank you." Her voice was soft but steady. The attendant smiled, surprised to hear her speak at last. Hours passed peacefully. The passengers read, slept, or watched movies. The sky outside turned from bright blue to a deep silver as the sun began to set over the horizon. The plane glided smoothly through a thin layer of clouds. In the cockpit, Captain Drew and Simon chatted about routine procedures. Drew was experienced, flying for over 20 years. He had handled storms, engine failures, and long intercontinental flights. To him, today was just another simple trip. Yet something in the data display bothered Simon. He frowned and said, "Captain, I'm getting a small fluctuation in the left engine reading." "Could be nothing, but it's strange." Drew checked and nodded. "Might be a sensor glitch. Keep an eye on it." The numbers returned to normal after a few minutes, so they relaxed. But that moment of uncertainty carried a quiet warning none of them noticed deeply. Back in the cabin, a small child began crying. His mother tried to calm him with a toy plane. Mira turned her head toward the child and smiled gently. She whispered a few words the mother could not hear, but somehow the boy stopped crying. He looked at her curiously, then smiled back. The mother thanked her softly, but Mira only nodded again. There was kindness in her eyes, but still no need for words. A while later, Dan, the man sitting beside her, looked out and said, "The clouds look beautiful at this height. Makes you wonder what's above them," Mira replied quietly. "A lot more than people think." He laughed, thinking she was joking. She was not. As night began to fall, the cabin lights dimmed. The stars outside looked brighter, scattered like dust over a deep black sea. Mira kept her gaze fixed on one particular section of the sky. It was a habit she had kept for years, ever since she had left her last flight. She could almost sense the thin silver line of defense satellites orbiting far above. Most humans did not know their positions, but she remembered every one of them. She had helped design the code that guided them. Those silent machines were the reason Earth was still safe, but that was another life. She had left it behind. Or so she thought. Simon's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are reaching our cruising altitude of 30,000 feet. Please sit back and enjoy your flight." Applause followed from a few excited passengers. The rest returned to reading or resting. Mira took a slow breath and closed her eyes again. The rhythm of the engines was steady and calm. Then, without warning, a faint beep echoed from the cockpit. It was too soft for most ears, but Mira opened her eyes instantly. She listened closely. It stopped, then came again after a few seconds. Her heart rate changed slightly. Not from fear, but focus. She recognized that tone. It belonged to a subsystem warning in the flight control unit. Simon silenced the alarm and checked the diagnostics. Everything seemed fine. He marked it in the log anyway. Drew smiled and said, "Good habit, Simon. Always trust your gut." In the cabin, Mira shifted slightly in her seat. Dan noticed her sudden attention. "Everything all right?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Yes, just listening." He laughed again. "To what? The engines?" She nodded once. "Exactly." He thought it was strange, but her calm tone made it sound normal. He soon returned to his screen, unaware that she had just recognized a sound few people on Earth could identify. For another hour, the flight continued peacefully. The crew served dinner, the lights were dimmed, and most passengers started to doze off. Mira remained awake, her gaze occasionally moving toward the cockpit door. She was remembering a time when she sat in that seat herself, guiding ships through the blackness of space, trusting only her instincts and her machine. Those days had ended when the Solar Defense Initiative was shut down. Her mission had been buried under official silence. Her call sign had been erased from every record. Now she was just another name on a passenger list. But fate had placed her here again, in the sky she once ruled. Outside, the stars seemed to blink brighter as if watching her. The calm hum of the engines filled the air. People slept soundly, unaware of the small flicker of data passing between Earth's orbit and the plane's receiver. It was so faint that even the crew did not see it. But Mira knew. She always knew. Her eyes flicked toward the window and her hand tightened slightly on the armrest. Something unseen had touched the plane's communication link for a second, then vanished. It was not random interference. It was a pattern she had seen before. The same kind of coded ping the alien probe had used years ago before it tried to hack an orbital station. She said nothing. Not yet. The night stretched on quietly. The aircraft moved smoothly through the dark sky. Mira sat still, every sense alert but her expression calm. She could not act until she was sure. Inside her bag rested a small metal badge, old and worn, marked with an eagle holding 3 stars. It was her badge from her old days as a test pilot. She had kept it only as a reminder, but it might soon become her identity once again. For now, she remained the silent passenger. When the captain made another calm announcement, thanking everyone for flying with them and promising a safe arrival in Titan City, Mira allowed herself a small sigh of relief. Maybe it was just a false alarm. Maybe she was only remembering too much. She closed her eyes again, unaware that fate was already setting the next moment in motion. The calm flight that had lulled everyone into comfort was about to change forever. For now, though, the world inside Flight 417 was peaceful. The sky outside was endless and quiet. Mira, the woman who had once defended humanity among the stars, sat silently in the middle row, unnoticed by all. Her story had not begun yet, but destiny was waiting at 30,000 feet. The night sky outside Flight 417 looked calm and endless. The stars glimmered like silver dust scattered across the dark. Inside the aircraft, the cabin was dim and peaceful. Most passengers were asleep under the warm yellow light, and the quiet hum of the engines made the air feel steady and safe. Mira was still awake. Her eyes were half open, her body still, but her mind was alert. She could hear the faint rhythm of the engines and the soft clicks of the control panels far ahead in the cockpit. She had learned to listen to machines the way some people listen to music. Every sound told her a story. Dan, the man sitting beside her, had fallen asleep with his tablet on his lap. The flight attendants moved quietly through the aisles, checking passengers and adjusting blankets. A soft voice came from the speaker as the co-pilot spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your co-pilot, Simon. We are cruising smoothly at 30,000 feet. We should arrive in Titan City right on time." Several sleepy passengers smiled at the announcement. Mira looked toward the cockpit door again. She had not forgotten the small warning tone she heard earlier. It had lasted only a few seconds, but she knew it was not a normal signal. She tried to relax, telling herself that it was not her duty anymore. She was just a passenger now. But deep inside she felt a strange weight. She could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. In the cockpit, Captain Drew sat comfortably in his chair. He was a tall man with gray hair and a steady voice. Flying was his passion, and he always said the sky was where he felt most alive. He checked the instruments again and smiled. Everything looked perfect. Simon was beside him reading flight data and weather patterns. "Everything is clear ahead, Captain," he said. "No turbulence, no storms." "Good," Drew replied. "I like quiet flights like this." "Easy work for both of us," Simon laughed. "Maybe too easy. Sometimes I miss the old challenges." "Careful what you wish for," Drew said jokingly. Then he stretched, took a sip of coffee, and adjusted his seat. The minutes passed quietly. The only sounds were the hum of engines and the soft beeps of the navigation computer. Then suddenly, one of the lights on the control panel blinked yellow. Simon leaned forward. "Captain, we have a power fluctuation again," he said. "Left engine display shows minor deviation." Drew frowned, checking the numbers. The reading shifted slightly, then went back to normal. "It's fine," he said. "Probably a small software glitch. Keep monitoring it." Simon nodded, but his eyes stayed on the screen. He had a strange feeling, too. The plane had been well maintained. A glitch was possible, but something about it bothered him. Back in the cabin, Mira opened her eyes fully. She felt the small vibration change beneath her seat. It was tiny, something no one else would notice. To her trained senses, it was enough to know that the engines were not perfectly balanced. She turned to look out the window. The stars seemed to sway slightly, as if the aircraft had shifted just a little from its intended path. Her mind calculated instinctively. Altitude 30,000 feet. Speed stable, but power output slightly uneven. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Not a glitch." Moments later, the plane trembled lightly. A few passengers stirred but went back to sleep. Mira kept watching the wing, seeing the faint ripple of light passing along its surface. That was static buildup. It happened when the electromagnetic balance changed in the upper atmosphere. She pressed the call button. The flight attendant came over with a polite smile. "Yes, ma'am? Do you need something?" "Everything all right?" Mira asked softly. "Yes, everything's fine," the attendant said cheerfully. "Just a little wind outside. Nothing to worry about." Mira nodded but didn't feel convinced. She thanked the attendant and sat back. Her fingers tapped lightly on the armrest, following the rhythm of the engines. Then, as she listened, she realized one sound was missing, the faint balancing pulse from the left engine. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That signal meant the engine stabilizer was working. Now it was silent. She could not explain this to anyone without sounding strange, so she stayed quiet. In the cockpit, Drew rubbed his forehead. "Feeling a bit dizzy," he muttered. Simon looked at him. "You all right, Captain?" "Yeah," Drew said, smiling faintly. "Just need a sip of water." He reached for the bottle, took a drink, and returned his hand to the controls. But his movements were slower than before. He blinked several times, trying to focus. Simon noticed his hand shaking slightly. "Captain?" Simon asked again. Drew opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. His body slumped forward, hitting the control panel. The alarm blared instantly. Simon froze for half a second, then pulled him back and shouted into the intercom. "Captain down. Medical emergency in the cockpit." The sudden alarm broke the calm of the cabin. Passengers woke up in confusion. A few people gasped and others whispered nervously. The flight attendants rushed toward the front. Mira was already unbuckling her seatbelt. Her movements were calm but quick. Dan looked at her in shock. "What's happening?" he asked. She didn't answer. She stood up and walked down the aisle while others turned their heads toward her. The flight attendants tried to block the way. "Ma'am, please stay seated," one of them said. I can help, Mira replied firmly. Her voice was low but strong. The attendant hesitated. Mira's tone was not loud, yet it carried a sense of authority that made people listen. Simon opened the cockpit door slightly and called out, "Is there a doctor on board?" A man in the middle row raised his hand. "I'm a medical doctor," he said and hurried forward. Mira followed behind him. Simon was too busy checking the controls to notice who else came in. The doctor examined Captain Drew quickly. "His pulse is weak," he said. "He's breathing but unconscious. Can you handle it?" Simon asked. "I'll try," the doctor replied. "Keep the plane steady." Simon's hands moved quickly across the control panels. The alarms were still flashing. The autopilot was active, but the engine readings were unstable. He had to manage both systems while keeping calm. Mira stepped closer and looked over his shoulder. She saw the readings and instantly understood what was wrong. The left engine's power distribution unit was failing. It wasn't catastrophic yet, but if it continued, the plane could lose balance. Simon noticed her standing there. "Ma'am, please step back. I can't have passengers here." "I know what I'm seeing," Mira said calmly. "Your left engine output is uneven. You need to switch to auxiliary stabilizer mode." Simon blinked. "How do you know that?" She didn't answer directly. "Do it now," she said. "You're burning too much fuel on one side." Her certainty made him hesitate only for a second. He flipped the switch and saw the reading stabilize a little. His eyes widened. "You're right. It worked." "Good," she said quietly. "Keep the altitude at 30,000 and don't engage climb mode until the system resets." Simon turned to her. "Who are you?" Before she could answer, the doctor interrupted. "He's still unconscious but stable. We need to land as soon as possible." Simon nodded. He grabbed the radio. "Mayday, mayday. This is Flight 417. Captain is down due to medical emergency. Requesting emergency landing clearance." Static filled the line for a moment, then ground control responded. "Flight 417, confirm your position." Simon checked the radar and gave the coordinates. "We are at 30,000 feet, 70 miles south of Titan City. Preparing to descend." "Copy that," came the reply. "Maintain altitude until further instructions." Simon sighed heavily. He turned to Mira again. "I need you to go back to your seat, ma'am. Thank you for your help." But Mira stayed still. She looked at the navigation screen and the blinking light on the communication panel. There was interference again. She knew that pattern. It was the same signal she had sensed before. "Your communication link is compromised," she said. Simon frowned. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the screen. "That signal is not normal. It's not coming from ground control." He stared at the blinking icon. It was a faint pulse repeating every few seconds. He thought it was noise. But now that she said it, it did look structured like a code. Simon swallowed hard. "Who are you?" he asked again. Mira met his gaze. "Someone who used to fly higher than this." He didn't understand what she meant, but there was no time to ask. Another alarm went off. The left engine warning light turned red again. "Not now," Simon whispered, fighting to stabilize the controls. "The system's going crazy." Mira leaned closer. "Let me help," he hesitated. "You can't, you're not." "Trust me," she said firmly. Something in her voice broke through his doubt. He nodded reluctantly. "Fine, sit here." She moved into the captain's seat. Her hands touched the controls with familiarity, her eyes scanning the screens. It was like her mind switched into an old pattern. The years away from the cockpit disappeared in seconds. Simon watched as she adjusted the throttle and corrected the balance manually. The aircraft steadied. The alarm stopped. He stared in disbelief. "You're a pilot," he said. Mira didn't look up. "I was." The doctor in the back turned and asked, "Are we safe now?" "For the moment," she replied. "But this is not just a power fault. Someone or something is interfering with the system." Simon looked at her again, still confused. "What do you mean, something?" She took a deep breath. "You'll see soon. Keep the passengers calm. I'll handle the flight." Simon nodded, still unsure but strangely comforted by her confidence. He left the cockpit to inform the attendants. The cockpit of Flight 417 was tense but under control. Mira's hands moved steadily over the controls. Every adjustment she made balanced the engines and stabilized the aircraft. The alarms had stopped, but the faint pulse of interference still flickered on the screen. She recognized it instantly. It was not random. This was a signal designed to disrupt flight systems. Mira had seen patterns like this before, years ago during her missions in the Solar Defense Initiative. Only a trained pilot with experience in advanced technology could notice it, and she had been one of the best. Simon sat behind her, still in shock. "How do you know all this?" he asked quietly. Mira did not answer immediately. She scanned the radar, noting the minor shifts in altitude caused by the interference. "It's old technology," she said finally. "It is not human-made. Someone has taken control of the drones orbiting above us." Simon's eyes widened. "Drones? You mean like military satellites?" "Yes," Mira said. "But these are different. They were designed to monitor Earth quietly, to protect it. Whoever's using them now has hacked the system." He stared at her, trying to understand. Her calm demeanor made it clear she was not exaggerating. She was analyzing the problem like a professional, not panicking like most people would. Suddenly, the co-pilot Simon noticed a blinking light on the communication panel. It was a high-frequency pulse, too fast for normal voice transmission. "What is that?" he asked. Mira leaned forward, her fingers dancing over the switches. "It is a command signal. Whoever is sending it is trying to control the plane remotely." Simon swallowed. "We need to land. We can't fight this from up here." Mira shook her head. "Landing now would be dangerous. If they force the engines down or disrupt the stabilizer, we could lose control. I need to override the system manually." He looked at her hands moving with perfect precision. "Who are you, really?" he asked again. Mira took a deep breath and finally removed her jacket. Beneath it was a gray uniform, slim and reinforced, with a small silver badge pinned on the chest. Simon gasped. "Skyfire," he whispered. Mira did not look at him. She focused entirely on the controls. The badge was her old call sign, the name she had earned when she led humanity's elite missions in space. It had been classified, erased from records, but she had never forgotten it. Simon's mind raced. "Skyfire? You're the one they said disappeared years ago, but that's impossible." Why are you here?" Mira's lips moved, but her words were calm. "The threat never left. It just followed me quietly. I never thought it would reach Earth again, but here it is. We have to stop it before it interferes with the autopilot completely." Simon turned toward the instruments, trying to understand the data. He had worked as a pilot for years, but nothing in his training matched what Mira was doing. Her hands moved faster than any human could naturally react, reading the numbers as if they were letters on a page. Suddenly, the plane jolted slightly. The left engine fluctuated again. Mira's fingers pressed several buttons, adjusting the power flow and rerouting the stabilizer. The plane leveled again. "Unbelievable," Simon said quietly. "I've never seen anyone do that so fast." Mira did not respond. She was too focused. Her eyes scanned every light, every screen, every beep and pulse of the engines. She could feel the interference trying to take over. She had dealt with signals like this in orbit, but never inside a passenger plane with lives on the line. She adjusted the throttle carefully, then switched several circuits manually. The plane's hum became steady. The autopilot was overridden, but the engines were balanced. Simon exhaled in relief. "Okay, that's stable. For now." Mira's gaze flicked to the radar screen. There was movement outside the plane, a small blip moving too fast to be any normal aircraft. She squinted. "It's not human," she said calmly. "What do you mean?" Simon asked. "I mean the object outside is the source of the interference. It is intelligent, not automated. Someone or something is controlling the drones in orbit. They are testing us." Simon felt a chill. He glanced at the passengers, many of whom were still asleep, unaware that their lives were in danger. He looked at Mira. "And you think you can stop it?" She nodded slightly. "I have to. We cannot let it take over the plane. These people or machines want control. If they succeed, the autopilot will fail completely, and the plane will crash." The co-pilot's hands trembled slightly. "What are we dealing with?" Mira finally allowed herself a small glance at him. Her eyes were calm but fierce. "Technology I helped build, but someone has repurposed it. They learned from me, but they do not know everything." "I do." Simon leaned back, trying to understand. He had heard stories of Skyfire when she was active, but he had never believed them. Now, standing here with her controlling the plane, he realized the stories were true. She was more than a pilot. She was humanity's protector in the sky. Mira checked the engine readouts again. The interference pulse was growing stronger. The left engine began to fluctuate slightly once more. She switched circuits quickly and adjusted the stabilizer. The plane leveled. Simon watched her in awe. "How did you even remember all this?" She gave a small smile, but it was not cheerful. It was determined. Muscle memory and training. When you have flown beyond the atmosphere, the rules of gravity and engines are easier to feel than to read. I remember every system I built, every backup I installed, every safety measure. This is what I do, Simon nodded slowly. He had never imagined a human could operate with such precision. Every movement of her hands was calculated. Every switch and button pressed exactly when needed. She was saving the plane with her knowledge, instincts, and experience combined. Suddenly, the cockpit lights flickered briefly. The interference signal was stronger. The radar showed more movement outside, more than one small blip now. Mira's eyes narrowed. "They are trying to test us," she said. "They want to see how fast I react," Simon frowned. "Why? Who would do this?" She did not answer. Her mind was too focused on the controls. She needed to secure the plane first. She adjusted the throttle, rerouted auxiliary circuits, and rebalanced the stabilizers. The hum of the engines became steady once again. She could feel the aircraft responding to her touch. Every vibration in the metal, every pulse of energy, every movement of air was something she could sense. She had trained herself to feel the plane as an extension of her own body. She was no longer just a passenger. She was the pilot. She was Skyfire. Simon stepped back, letting her work. He watched as she moved seamlessly between instruments, reading data, analyzing signals, and predicting interference. He realized that he had never seen a human capable of such control. It was beyond skill. It was beyond experience. It was instinct and intelligence combined. Mira adjusted the flight path slightly, guiding the aircraft around the small but fast objects outside. She was careful, precise, and deliberate. She could feel the interference pulse trying to influence the engines. Her hands worked faster than the pulse could travel through the circuits. "Captain Drew?" she whispered softly. The unconscious man slumped in his chair, unaware of the danger. She studied his condition. He was stable for now, but he needed medical attention soon. She noted it silently, her mind recording every detail for later. Then she turned to Simon. "We need to stabilize communications. If they are interfering, ground control may not be able to guide us. We have to send a direct override signal to the system." Simon nodded. "I can help with that." She guided him through the steps. Together, they set up a secure channel, bypassing the standard transmission lines. Mira's eyes never left the radar or the engine readouts. The interference pulse was relentless, but now she could track it directly. The plane moved smoothly through the night sky despite the danger outside. Mira's presence in the cockpit was commanding. She was no longer silent. Her past had returned to her. Her instincts, her experience, her call sign, all of it was active now. Simon watched her with a mixture of fear and awe. He realized that the passengers, unaware of the battle happening at 30,000 feet, were in the hands of someone extraordinary. Mira spoke softly, almost to herself. "Let's show them why humans are still special in the sky." The words were quiet, but Simon felt their weight. They were not boastful. They were a statement of determination. The quiet passenger had revealed her hidden identity. The world at 30,000 feet would never be the same again. The cockpit of Flight 417 was tense but calm under Mira's hands. The plane moved steadily at 30,000 feet, but the radar showed multiple fast-moving objects approaching from the upper atmosphere. Mira's eyes narrowed as she studied the display. The objects were not human-made. Their speed, trajectory, and energy signature all indicated advanced technology beyond current human capabilities. Simon sat behind her, gripping his seat. "What are those?" he asked quietly. "They are not normal aircraft," Mira said calmly. "They are intelligent. Someone is testing the plane, the passengers, and me. They want to see how fast I can react." Simon shivered. Why would anyone do this? Mira did not answer immediately. Her hands moved over the throttle and switches. She adjusted the auxiliary stabilizers to handle sudden energy pulses from the objects outside. The hum of the engines shifted slightly, but she could feel the aircraft holding steady. She looked at the radar again. The objects were closing in fast. Their path suggested they were surrounding the plane in a coordinated pattern. It was like a game, and the players had superior intelligence. Mira recognized the design immediately. "Drones," she said. "Advanced orbital drones. They were built for surveillance and defense. Someone has taken control of them." Simon's jaw dropped. "You mean our satellites?" "Yes," Mira said. But these have been modified. They are no longer monitoring. They are attacking. The first pulse of energy hit the plane. It was faint, but it caused a minor jolt. Passengers stirred in their seats. Some screamed, thinking it was turbulence. Mira felt the vibration through the controls. She adjusted the stabilizers instantly, neutralizing the effect. The plane leveled again, perfectly steady. "Captain?" Simon asked, his voice trembling. "Can they do more damage?" "They can try," Mira said. "But we are ready. I built parts of this system myself. I know how it works. They cannot trick me completely." She activated the emergency override system. Small lights blinked on the panels. The plane's internal network was now shielded from outside interference. The objects outside pulsed again, sensing resistance. Their formation changed, moving faster, coming closer. Simon leaned forward. "What are you going to do?" Mira did not answer immediately. She scanned the instruments, feeling every vibration, every shift in air pressure. "We fight smart," she said finally. "We don't run. They will test our reactions. We must stay steady, conserve energy, and counter every move they make." She pressed a button and a small flare ejected from the aircraft. The light shot into the sky, creating a bright trail. The drones reacted instantly. Their positions shifted, retreating slightly. Mira smiled faintly. "They are learning," she said. "But they cannot match intuition." Simon watched in awe as she moved her hands with precision over the controls. Every adjustment, every switch, every throttle change was perfectly timed. The plane seemed to respond to her as if it were alive. He realized that this was more than skill. It was instinct, experience, and deep understanding of technology. The first drone fired a low-energy pulse toward the aircraft. Mira tilted the plane slightly, allowing the pulse to glance off the fuselage. It created a bright flash against the dark sky. Passengers screamed. The lights in the cabin flickered. Mira remained calm. "Stay down," she said quietly. "We are fine. Just stay calm." The drone fired again. Mira adjusted the auxiliary engines, diverting power to the stabilizers. The pulse hit the plane, causing another minor jolt. She immediately rerouted the energy and balanced the aircraft. Simon could not believe his eyes. "How are you doing this?" He whispered. "I told you," Mira said. "I built parts of this system. I know its weaknesses. They are advanced, but I am faster." The drones moved in tighter formations now. They surrounded the plane from above, the sides, and slightly below. Mira could see them on the radar as small, fast blips. Each pulse of energy they sent was measured, calculated, and designed to test her limits. She pressed another button, activating a countermeasure system built into the aircraft. Small energy flares shot out in multiple directions. The drones reacted, changing course rapidly. Mira adjusted the plane's altitude slightly, moving through a narrow path between the approaching drones. Simon leaned back, astonished. "They are almost hitting us," he said. "They are trying," Mira said calmly. "But they cannot predict human instinct." A second pulse hit the left engine. This time it caused a stronger jolt. The plane tilted slightly, enough to wake some passengers fully. The cabin lights flickered. A few people screamed. Mira's hands moved faster, correcting the tilt, stabilizing the engines, and leveling the plane. She looked at Simon. "We need to show them that humans are not predictable. They calculate, but they cannot feel. They cannot adapt in real time like we can." Simon nodded, still struggling to understand. "What are you going to do?" Mira activated another override. She routed power to the shields embedded within the aircraft's frame. These shields were never used in normal flights. They had been part of a secret project during her time in the Solar Defense Initiative. The plane shuddered as the shields activated, but the vibrations stopped after a few seconds. Outside, the drones pulsed with blue light. They moved faster, their patterns more complex. Mira studied their formation. She could see the gaps. She adjusted the plane, flying through the openings, avoiding their pulses. Each movement was precise, every adjustment calculated instinctively. Simon watched her, unable to look away. He realized that the passengers had no idea what was happening. Their lives were in the hands of someone extraordinary. Mira was not just flying, she was fighting. The drones continued to close in, sending faster pulses. Mira pressed another button, deploying flares behind the aircraft. The drones reacted, but she anticipated their movements. She tilted the plane, dodging the energy bursts while maintaining control. "Captain Drew is still unconscious," Simon said quietly. "We need to get him help." "I will," Mira said. "But first we stabilize. Then we descend slowly." We cannot land while they are testing us. The drones adjusted their formation again. Mira noticed a pattern. They were circling, waiting for her to make a mistake. They underestimated one thing: human instinct. She moved the plane in a sudden sharp climb, causing the drones to fire and miss. She leveled the aircraft again, keeping passengers safe. Simon swallowed hard. "You are incredible," he said. Mira's face remained calm. "It is not about being incredible. It is about survival. We protect the lives in this plane, and we show that humans are still capable when it matters most." A bright pulse streaked toward the plane. Mira adjusted the shields again, diverting energy and absorbing the impact. The plane trembled but did not lose control. She leaned forward, monitoring every system. Simon could barely keep up. "They are learning faster," he said. "They always do," Mira said. "But we adapt faster." She adjusted the plane's course slightly to approach a safer path. Another pulse struck, but this time she anticipated it. She tilted the plane just enough to let the energy glance off, maintaining perfect balance. The passengers were unaware of the invisible battle happening around them. Mira pressed a final sequence of buttons. A temporary countermeasure field activated, sending out a signal to confuse the drones. Their formation broke slightly, giving the plane a moment of calm. She smiled faintly. "Now," she whispered. She guided the aircraft through a narrow corridor, the drones chasing but unable to predict her movements. Simon realized she was not just reacting. She was predicting. Every action of the drones, every pulse she already knew and countered instantly. The hum of the engines became steady again. The interference pulses diminished. The drones retreated, their test complete. Mira kept the plane steady, breathing slowly. She turned to Simon. "They will not stop completely. But we have shown them humans are unpredictable." Simon shook his head, amazed. "I never imagined anyone could do this." Mira finally leaned back slightly. Her calm eyes met his. "That is what humans are capable of," she said quietly. "We adapt. We survive. We protect, even when no one believes we can." Outside, the stars shone quietly, indifferent to the battle. Inside, Flight 417 continued smoothly, stabilized and safe. The passengers slept, unaware of the extraordinary defense that had just taken place above 30,000 feet. Mira's hands rested gently on the controls, but her mind remained alert. She knew the battle was not over. More challenges could come. But for now, the plane was safe and the passengers would reach their destination unharmed. Simon looked at her with awe. "What is your name?" he asked softly. She reached into her jacket and showed the small silver badge. "Skyfire," she said, her voice calm and steady. The word echoed quietly in the cockpit. Simon understood then that the silent passenger had revealed her true identity. She was not just a pilot. She was humanity's protector, a symbol of skill, courage, and intelligence. The plane continued to glide smoothly through the night sky. Mira kept her eyes on the horizon, ready for whatever challenge might come next. Her battle was not over, but for now, Flight 417 was safe. The plane glided through the night sky, calm but alert. Mira kept her hands on the controls, her mind fully focused. The drones had retreated for now, but she knew they might return. Every instrument in the cockpit was alive with signals, numbers, and pulses. To most eyes, it looked ordinary. To Mira, it was a battlefield. Simon sat behind her, still in awe. He had never seen anyone move so confidently under pressure. "Skyfire," he said quietly, using her call sign. "How much longer do you think we can stay here?" Mira glanced at the radar. "Not long," she replied. "We need to descend gradually and approach Titan City carefully. The interference may still be present and we cannot take risks with the autopilot." She adjusted the throttle slowly, beginning a gentle descent. The plane responded instantly, the engines humming evenly. The city lights below started to glimmer faintly, breaking the darkness of the night. Inside the cabin, the passengers were beginning to stir. Some had sensed minor turbulence during the earlier attack and were quietly whispering to each other. None of them knew what had really happened. To them, Flight 417 had been slightly bumpy, but nothing dangerous. Mira's calm voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent to Titan City. Please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. We will arrive safely shortly." Her words were soft and reassuring. The passengers followed instructions without panic. Her tone carried authority even without revealing her extraordinary skill. Simon watched her work with admiration. "How do you stay so calm?" he asked. Mira gave a small smile, almost to herself. "I know what I can do. I know my limits and the plane's limits. Panic only makes things worse. Focus is what saves lives." The plane descended steadily, the city lights growing brighter. Mira kept her eyes on the radar, the instruments, and the horizon. Every movement was calculated. Every adjustment was precise. The drones were gone for now, but Mira could still sense faint signals in the upper atmosphere. They were monitoring, waiting, perhaps planning another test. She ignored them for the moment, focusing on the immediate task: landing Flight 417 safely. "Captain Drew still needs medical attention," Simon said, his voice low. "We can't just land and leave him in the cockpit." Mira nodded. "He will be fine once we are on the ground. The medical team is ready at the airport. For now, we keep the plane stable." She guided the aircraft closer to the runway, lining it up perfectly. The runway light stretched ahead like a glowing ribbon. Her hands moved over the controls smoothly, balancing the engines, adjusting flaps, and guiding the descent. Simon watched in amazement. "I've seen landings before, but this is different. You make it look effortless." Mira's eyes flicked to him briefly. "It is not effortless. It takes experience, training, and understanding the machine as an extension of yourself. Then it becomes almost instinct." The plane approached the runway. Mira lowered the landing gear carefully, checking each indicator. The hum of the engines changed slightly as the wheels extended. The flaps adjusted, and the plane's descent slowed perfectly. Passengers looked out the windows, seeing the bright lights of the airport. Some clapped quietly, thinking it was just a normal landing. Others whispered, impressed by the smoothness of the descent. Mira focused entirely on the runway. Her hands guided the plane's angle, keeping it perfectly aligned. The wind shifted slightly, causing a minor tilt. She corrected instantly, leveling the aircraft with precise movements. "Brace for landing," she said softly. The plane touched the runway smoothly. The tires created a soft screech against the asphalt, but there was no jolt. Mira applied the brakes gently, guiding Flight 417 to a complete stop at the gate. The engines powered down, and the cabin lights brightened. Passengers looked around, amazed at how smooth the landing had been. Some smiled nervously, thinking it had been an ordinary flight. Few knew they had just survived a battle at 30,000 feet. Mira unbuckled her seatbelt, finally allowing herself a small sigh of relief. Simon leaned back, still stunned. "We made it," he said quietly. "Yes," Mira replied. "Everyone is safe. That is what matters." The flight attendants moved through the cabin, checking passengers and offering assistance. Mira watched silently, letting them handle the usual post-landing procedures. She remained calm, her focus shifting from crisis to safety. At the front of the cabin, the doctor attending to Captain Drew nodded. "He will be fine," he said. "Just unconscious for a few minutes. He will recover." Mira nodded. "Good, he needs rest, not stress." Simon turned to her. "Skyfire, you saved us all." "I cannot believe it." She gave a small smile. "I only did what was necessary. That is all any pilot can do when lives are at stake." The passengers began disembarking, still unaware of the extraordinary events that had occurred. Mira followed them slowly, allowing the flight attendants and Simon to manage the situation. She did not seek recognition. She did not need it. Her satisfaction came from the fact that everyone was safe. Outside, the night was calm. The city lights of Titan City glimmered in the distance, welcoming the plane back from the skies. Mira took a deep breath, feeling the wind and the hum of the engines fading into silence. Simon approached her quietly. "You could have told us who you were sooner," he said softly. Mira shook her head. "My identity is not what matters. The mission, the people, the plane, these are what matter. Names are not important in moments like these." Simon nodded, understanding. "But people should know the truth. They should know who saved their lives." Mira smiled faintly. "Perhaps someday. For now, the plane is safe and everyone can go home." The passengers had begun to gather their belongings, smiling, chatting, and leaving the aircraft. Mira watched quietly. She had returned from a life long hidden, but she had done so without fanfare. Her presence had been enough. Her skills had been enough. Simon looked at her once more. "Will they come back?" he asked. "They might," Mira said quietly. "But humans are unpredictable. They adapt. They survive. That is why we are still capable. That is why I am still here." The engines powered down completely. The hum faded into the night. Mira adjusted her jacket, placing her hands on the small silver badge pinned to her chest. Her call sign, Skyfire, gleamed in the soft light. Passengers began to leave the plane, some noticing her calm and composed demeanor. A few looked at her curiously, sensing something extraordinary about her. Mira simply nodded politely, remaining silent. Simon turned to her one last time. "You are extraordinary," he said. Mira smiled softly. "I am just a pilot," she said, "but I will always do what is necessary to protect lives. That is enough for me." The airport lights reflected on the plane's metal surface. Outside, the city was quiet, peaceful, and safe. Flight 4117 had returned from the skies without loss. Without panic and without fear, Mira stood for a moment, watching the passengers leave, the crew moving efficiently and the city lights glowing. She felt the familiar sense of calm that always came after a mission was complete. Simon asked quietly, "Will you stay on Earth now?" Mira looked up at the stars, faint but still visible in the dark sky. "For now," she said, "but the sky will always call me, and when it does, I will answer. That is what it means to be Skyfire." The badge on her chest reflected the airport lights. The name that had been erased, hidden, and forgotten was now known to those who needed to witness it most. Mira stepped off the plane gracefully, walking toward the waiting medical team for Captain Drew. The passengers passed by, unaware of the hero among them, but safe because of her skill, her instincts, and her courage. The night was calm. The city slept peacefully, and in the quiet, Mira felt the weight of the sky settle around her once more. She had returned, unseen but powerful, silent but heroic. Humanity's protector had revealed herself not for fame, not for glory, but for the lives she had sworn to protect. And with that, Flight 417 rested safely at the gate, the passengers alive, the crew relieved, and the silent hero finally known by her true name, Skyfire.